people's lives. And you all are social innovators regardless of what you're doing, I'm sure of it. Second thing with respect to my history and just kind of what got me here, I've started off, my superpower I guess I would describe as extreme empathy. And I grew up in a household where I didn't necessarily feel super safe, and so I learned hypervigilance. And what was rageful at the time has actually turned into something that has served me incredibly well in my life, because I live not only in the heart and soul of myself, but of the people that are being served. And I try and feel what they feel as much as possible. And I envision their before picture and where is the desired end destination that they need to get to, that they'd like to get to, whether they even realize it or not. And where does a product and a person need to come together to make that happen? I'm going to talk about that a little bit more as we get to it, but I took the classic entrepreneur journey, started off, did amazing. At one point overinvested in technology, ended up $1 million in a hole, wondering how I was going to make the next payroll. Came through that. We had a whole video gaming practice. All the video games that go to the world go through an evolution process that we created. Again, built around extreme empathy. Built up, we had Deloitte was really interested in buying us. We had a couple days where we were vulnerable and we got hacked, and all those video game concepts that we were testing got published all over the internet. One of the worst days of my life, and overnight I lost Xbox, Activision, Disney, and Wizards of the Coast, and maybe a couple others. And didn't proceed through with Deloitte. Actually, they never even found out, but I decided I didn't want to do that. Rebuilt again, built a top 30 global market research company. When I got to the top again, I'm like, I am not going down again. I sold at the top, and then over the last 10 years, I've worked toward building out and supporting people more in small and mid-sized places, because that's where my heart and soul has evolved. And see if this actually works. And so, you wanted to see that, yeah. So I actually have two projects that I've been working on I'm super passionate about. The first one is keeprising.io. And this actually, I've had a few conversations with folks here, and I've come to appreciate how much having a problem pop up in your face is like, what am I going to do about it? In this case, it was my daughter who had an illness. I was super frustrated with the lack of support between appointments. And like any entrepreneur, like the rest of you here, I'm like, I'm pissed off and I'm going to do something about it. And the more I got into it, the more I realized we live in this world where we all are striving to live our best lives and become our best person that we are. And there's millions of people who support those individuals, whether it's a coach, a therapist, a case manager, a dietitian, a doctor. And the thing that absolutely astonished me was all of this requires a good intention that becomes an ongoing change in life. And you want to know what the success rate of a good intention becoming an ongoing habit is? Take a guess.
3%.
2%. The answer is less than 1%. And the reason, and think about it in your own life, we all have these good intentions. I'm going to be this. I want to show up for this person. I'm going to eat this differently. What happens with our good intentions most of the time? We don't even start. Why is it? Because on those few occasions when we have started a good intention, what typically happens? That's like, oh, I'm going to show up for Sarah, who works for me, and I'm going to be a good mentor to her. So I start, first day, yeah, I did this for Sarah. I'm a good person. Second day, I did it again. Third day, I got a proposal to get out the door. I forget about Sarah, and now what do? I start slamming myself, which only inhibits our good intentions even further. And yet it takes a good intention to turn something into become a new ongoing life practice to elevate the lives that we want. So I became fascinated And I've invested $2 million of my own money over the last 5 years with this relentlessness of how do I solve this problem? Because I'm kind of angry about it. And I think purpose comes from a little bit of anger, and it's okay to do that. What I came to appreciate is we built what is now a finished product called Keep Rising that is the ultimate relationship builder between any sort of mentor and a mentee to nurture new ongoing practices. And it creates a surround sound of what life is really needed to turn these micro habits into ongoing practices. I found out it takes 3 key things to make a good intention become an ongoing habit. And what amazes me, I don't know how nobody figured this out because they're all incredibly logical. First is it's got to be small and it's got to be clear and the client has to own it. I want to drink the green juice instead of the breakfast burrito because I'm going to take the money and put it into this that I saved. Or I'm going to give up my 2 o'clock cigarette. Small, manageable, I own it for myself. The second thing is I need to be reminded at those times when I would have made the bad choice that actually remind me I want to do the new choice. I call it joyful accountability, where I pop up and I get reminded, remember, and then I can check off, yeah, I did it. But the third key thing is we build around what we call heroic choices. And those heroic choices, I need an opportunity to celebrate and share those with people as I make them. And this is my greatest pleasure. I get to watch people record these heroic choices inside our platform. And it makes me cry pretty regularly to see the impact, and I know my purpose that I created. So now we're moving on to the next stage. We actually have a pathway to scale really, really quickly through an acquisition approach, through our distribution. So that's kind of one thing I'm working on. So if you know anybody who's interested in elevating ongoing practices in all kinds of environments, who's interested in uplifting the world, happy to do that. The second thing that I do a great deal of is helping people elevate their brands and businesses and how they present themselves to the world. And I wrote this book called The Rise Framework. The single biggest thing that I witness with entrepreneurs, you give me one more minute, is that I see that people operate out of what I call first-person mode. You know, it's like, here's what I do, here's what my product does, and here's what you need to know about me. And what they need to know is that the conclusions that you seek to inspire in the world. And taking responsibility for those conclusions that you create. So I've done this for a lot of brands and businesses. It changes people's lives. If you'd like to talk to me about it, be happy to share that and explore that with you more.
Awesome. Let's give it everybody. You should go up to Doug and ask him about why we shouldn't be motivated for money. It's a long conversation, but it's a great one. Okay, so next up we have Oralia Alvarez. She's the Director of Business Development and Mission Driven Finance. Let's give it up. Come on up. I've been waiting to see you present forever because she's a phenomenal speaker just conversationally, so this is going to be good.
I will say though, I really appreciate God mentioning that it's okay to have a little bit of anger in creating our purpose, because I kind of kid. My boss reminded me to tone down my message because I had a lot of passion. I used to be a student activist, but being a student activist has actually allowed me to be where I'm at today. But before I forget, I will pull out $2 bills to remind me that I need to ask you guys a question, and whoever does ask that question will get, not the 2, but each, yeah, we'll have 2 questions. All right, let's go ahead. Again, thank you. Super excited to be here specifically with phenomenal humans that have an interest in innovating business for the intention of moving humanity forward. My name is Oralia. I'm the Director of Business Development with Mission Driven Finance. Almost every human activity that is useful and important requires financing. My question to you is, if you had $1 billion, and maybe you do, I have no idea, right? It's San Diego after all. how would you invest it? At Mission Driven Finance, a for-profit asset management firm, we are on track to deploying and investing of $1 billion into communities by 2027. This means that, I know it sounds exciting, but this means that we're not getting enough sleep. We are creating markets where markets have been broken. And I'm going to repeat that one more time, because oftentimes when I'm hearing people conversate in regards to impact investing, it often tends to be dismissed as a nice to have or a good thing to do, or kind of doing it just for the sake of doing it. But that's not the case, and I'll get into that in a second. So mission-driven finance is in the mission or in the business of creating markets where markets have been broken. How? By redefining risk. We look for opportunities where others see risk. We seek to uncover undervalued assets in the markets by doing two things. Number one, betting on the management of companies, and secondly, by efficiently allocating strategic capital. My question is now, actually I'm going to give two of them. Who is the contemporary value investor that's really famous? Does anyone know? I know you guys know.
Warren Buffett.
Who will answer that one?
Warren Buffett.
Okay, you said Buffett, so that's going to go to Mr. Byron. Yes, perfect. Mr. Byron, and you are from the Financial Alliance. That's the reason you knew that answer, right?
I feel like cheap.
So, if Warren Buffett is actually the contemporary value investor, and we're following the same methodology of value investing, my question is what mission-driven finance doing truly novel? Is it truly innovative? I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. It's considered novel when it's applied to overlooked communities. It's considered novel when it's applied to overlooked founders, because we're using a approach that it actually works specifically for underserved communities. And most importantly, this stands to benefit greatly from this specific approach. So in other words, mission-driven finance is dismantling the institutionalization of exclusion by taking a private equity approach to creative underwriting, specifically in the debt space. What that looks like is we do not ask for personal guarantees, which is unheard of in this country, and we do not ask for personal credit scores when we're underwriting a specific investment. Why? Because these two mechanisms are the legacy of discrimination of finance in the United States. So this here is a specific example of what the institutionalization of exclusion looks like. This is not the 1800s, this is not the 1900s, this is in 2023. City National Bank had to pay $31 million because they had anti-Latino and anti-Black policies. What that looked like is they refused to provide any type of mortgage lending services to these two specific communities because they were considered too risky. Was there data to prove that these two communities were risky? The answer is no. It was mostly based on perception. Actually, before I forget. And why is this important? With many founders here in the room, all of you are aware that in order for you to access any type of funding, it's mandatory that you do have a personal guarantee. In other words, you need to have personal collateral to be able to pledge when you're looking for funding specifically for banks. Here's another example. I just realized that the slide got cut off. Here's another example of banking practices that, again, institutionalized exclusion in 2023. The Outbound Research, in partnership with the Stanford School of Business, revealed that Latino-owned firms in this country, even though they're profitable and they're generating higher annual revenues than their white founder counterparts, they're still getting rejected for funding. That's number one. But even if they get approved for funding, tragically, they're getting offered financial products that cost way more, only because, again, they're categorized as too risky. So these are the two specific practices that mission-driven finance is dismantling, okay? Mission-driven finance is flipping finance on its head. We refuse to uphold and continue to practice these two mechanisms that financial institutions in America have been upholding for decades. And so what has been the result of diversifying or flipping finance on its head? Number one, we've been able to diversify our portfolio. And I'm going to pause there for a second because unfortunately the word diversity, specifically in the contemporary political environment that we find ourselves in, tends to scare a lot of people. Some of them, the word brings a lot of maybe negative connotations. But what's really fascinating is that in the world of investing, diversity is mandatory. If you as a fund manager or an investor fail to diversify your portfolio, you're going to do very poorly when it comes to financial outcomes. Secondly, diversity is actually a risk mitigator, and that's exactly what we've done at Mission Driven Finance. We have leaned into the idea of the concept of diversity. As a result, we have 28% nonprofits in our portfolio, which still blows my mind. We invest in nonprofits with the expectation of a financial return. 60% of our portfolio companies are owned or led by women, and 64% are owned or led by people of color. These are the 4 more recent portfolio companies that we recently welcomed. 3 out of the 4 portfolio companies here received over $1 million of debt capital. Those are not small dollars. One of them did $900K. That's still a really good number. What's really ironic is all of the businesses that you see here have proven track records. They've actually established businesses in the past, and even then, they've had a really difficult time accessing capital. What's really interesting here, and I put the QR code so you guys can scan it and maybe read it later. I love this phenomenal article that does an excellent job of explaining how impact investors are actually better poised to weather economic downturns. I have 1 minute. Okay. So most importantly, how has the market responded? Oralia, is your firm mission-driven finance just a bunch of financial hippies putting money out there? The answer is yes, we're a bunch of financial hippies. We're putting a lot of money out there, but we're doing really well. How has the market responded? What's really interesting is that lenders are having a hard time kind of picking up the idea that you have the right to access affordable capital without personal guarantees. But what matters here is what are the capital markets saying? And that's what really matters, because capital markets is what makes the world go around. And that's what's going to speak volumes as far as financial outcomes. Capital markets are demanding that this type of investment opportunities are made available. Let me just go here really quickly. And so this is just an example of the 3 companies that, again, we recently invested in. Collectively, they've been able to bring in a total of 341 units, mix of affordable and attainable housing. And so what's the takeaway as far as impact investing? Impact investing really is moving money based on the future that you want. Finance by virtue was created to create value. Unfortunately, contemporary finance and capitalism has been extracting more value rather than creating it. Thank you.
Good question. So they go there, is this regional, national?
Oh,
Oralia. The answer is yes, you're innovative.
yes, innovative. And if you're seeking capital, like really large capital, our average check size this year has been $625,000. Those are not small numbers. So if you're looking for that type of capital, please reach out to me. And then if you're an investor that actually wants to add a little bit of stability in your portfolio, you talk to me.
Right, and national, regional,
yes.
what's your coverage area?
We are national. We have over 20 different funds, and by definition, we are an asset manager.
Okay.
And we will be putting $1 billion out by 2027.
She's vegan.
And she's vegan. And she was a former board member who gave tremendous service to Startup San Diego. So I want to thank you for your time and talent treasure there. Thank you. All right. So up next we have Dr. Cindy Lynn, who I don't know if we put doctor up there, and that was an error probably on my part. But the bottom line is she is the founder of Hey Social Good. She's putting data behind ESG reporting and a lot of other great stuff. I don't know if we can call you a hippie for good, but we can definitely call you Dr. Cindy Lynn, get on up here.
Hello. Let's see, that work. Okay, you can call me a hippie, especially after Oralia. If she's hippies for finance, I want to be hippies for data. So, hi everyone. It's great to see all of you. It's great to be in a room where people care about social innovation and impact. We all talk about it like it's everywhere, but it's not. And I'm super excited to share a little bit about how we're trying to make that happen in the business world. So my name is Cindy Lynn. I have an environmental science and engineering degree and ecology and habitat. But I used to work at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency for a really long time, working on regulations, standards development, both nationally and internationally. And the one thing I discovered that was really shocking to me was we did such a good job of trying to control pollution. Not to say there's not more pollution, there always is. But the ones that we focused on, we were able to regulate and control it. And I was surprised to discover that in the private sector, it's all over the map. There are no clear policies, there are no clear standards, and yet we expect businesses to somehow figure it out and work on ESG and sustainability. How can a business survive that? So, what we're focused on at Hey Social Good is really driving sustainability with clear social impact data. And what does that mean? It took us a bit of time to figure out what does the market want, what can the market take on, and why is this important for businesses beyond just feeling good and being a hippie and people talking about, oh, sustainability is important. I'm guessing every single one of you have heard of the term ESG, environmental social governance, and maybe even in your portfolio companies, you think you need to incorporate it. At the end of the day, what does that mean? If you actually internet research what the term sustainability means, you will get thousands and thousands of definitions. Everybody has a different definition of sustainability, yet every single company somehow, some way is supposed to work on some form of sustainability because we all care about the planet, we care about our health. So I took this out because the focus today is on social innovation, and what's really challenging about working on sustainability or social impact is that we're trying to change a system. We're trying to identify effective solutions and changing a system so that we can make progress. But how do we do that when we don't have enough data? So before I jump there, if you work on finance, if you're in business, everybody loves their data, right? You want to make great decisions based on good business intelligence, based on good marketing data, based on good financial data. We look at all of this information. And yet, if you look at the sustainability, ESG, social responsibility, all those terms, we actually don't have legitimate good data. What does good data mean? I'm going to share that with you in a little bit. But first I'm going to tell you what is the problem. How many of you have heard the term greenwashing? Okay, good. So for those of you who may not be familiar with it, greenwashing means that you are exaggerating claims about working on social responsibility in some form, or maybe you're outright lying, or maybe you're not sure what it means. So when customers, consumers, or all of us here, every single one of us as a consumer, expect that a business should work on sustainability, what does it mean? We have some indices like ESG, there are some international and national recommendations about what those mean, and there are even sustainability impact reports. So let me see, I'm gonna ask this question. Of all the businesses in the United States, there's about 20 million, depending on how you define what a business is, based on revenue or based on number of employees. But let's just say on average, it's about 20 million businesses here in the United States. What's the percentage of those businesses that have a sustainability report or an impact report or some kind of a carbon, tracking? I heard 5%.
Less than 5.
5%. Anything else? It's less than 0.5%.
Oh, what?
Probably even less than that. Based on looking at existing sustainability reports of mostly corporate companies, right? So Nike, Coca-Cola, of course, are going to have those. Or you're looking at carbon disclosure reports, or you're looking at impacting reports. We're only talking about tens of thousands, maybe, companies in the world, not just in the United States. That's a problem if we're trying to actually create a better people, planet, and profit. Because what we both heard from the two speakers before is in order to make better progress, all the things we care about, number one being our health, second planet, because we live here, right? We actually have to ensure that we make also a profit and we make market sense, because that's what drives our economy. The problem is sustainability is hard and costly, like I said, and there's a lack of compliance. But we continue to see the business succeed when they show social good policy, transparency. Our own data, looking at now over 10,000 types of businesses and businesses themselves, there is a gap of 80% between people who self-identify as being sustainable and whether they truly are sustainable. Our solution that we've been building to is to really try to use existing frameworks such as the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 goals, and we broke it up into all kinds of different metrics. And we've been collecting data on authentic metrics of businesses that are actually working on those, so that we can create credible assessment and verification, we can track and plan, but mostly we want businesses to do that. And we want businesses to do that without spending 100K, 500K, or a year, because that's the average, actually. So we have 20 million businesses minus 0.5%. That means most businesses can't do it, not because they don't want to, but because it's really hard, they lack that data. So that's what we've been doing. Really quick, this is a really busy slide, I know, but what I'm trying to communicate with you is that we actually created a platform where we use responsible sustainability AI that we've developed and defined based on domain knowledge of what environmental science is, sustainability, right, ecology, all of those different things, to track and identify what the sustainable impact means. And having done that, here's just one example of what we've done for one of our enterprise clients. We've looked at 10,000 fashion brands because in fashion, greenwashing is extremely important to the customers and consumers. We looked at fashion brands and all the supply chain. And really, when we evaluate for our client, those suite of the ones who are truly working on some kind of authentic sustainable practice, we're looking at only 15%. And the reason isn't because they don't want to, and the reason isn't because they're lying. The reason is because they lack the data and the information and the knowledge. But they can't go hire someone like me, right? A doctor of environmental science and engineering. Knowing that's too exorbitant. So what we're doing is building that platform. So what we've done is identify what those unique sustainable practices are at track, and we're building that platform to make it super easy and affordable. First, we're doing it, but now we're building the platform so businesses themselves can go on and do it themselves, so they can track better, make progress. And we're empowering, our goal is 2 million businesses to easily and affordably track and make sustainable, social, and ethical impact progress a part of their business so that they can also make better profit. Thank you. Thank
And the question, your business is for profit, right? So that's the heart of it, right? It's like it doesn't have to be 501c3 to be in the good business of social good. So this is the point we're making tonight. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Super excited about our next presenter, George Bunes, who is the co-founder of Ascender Systems. And of course I'm naturally excited about this. This is robots for good, baby. So this is good. Tell them all about it.
Absolutely, Cheryl, thank you so much. I guess I can talk to the microphone. And boy, the three speakers prior to me, forgive me for typing. I wasn't sending notes to friends, I was taking notes. I was so incredibly inspired by all three of the speakers prior to, hoping to make 4 of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goal. I am a fellow Latino, I definitely want to talk to you afterwards. And Doug, I was hugely inspired, and hopefully you can concur that I'm trying my best to make a social innovation impact. Is this on, by the way? Yep.
Yeah, I get it.
All right. Hey, it worked for me. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, my name is George. I'm the co-founder and CEO of the Ascender Systems. For us, thank you so much. That's Rockstar right over there. And I am a former helicopter pilot. Now, so what? Nice, right? There is a relevance to this. As for flying helicopters, I flew humanitarian assistance, disaster response, all over the world, over 200 missions from Djibouti, Eritrea, Somalia, Haiti. I flew into Fukushima. I got to see humanitarian assistance and disaster response firsthand, so I can tell you, without a doubt, that when a disaster strikes, emergency services have to be deployed to provide that social good, to provide water, clothing, emergency services right away. You have to establish these 3 things. Now, these aren't George's list over here. This is USAID, American Red Cross, FEMA, Doctors Without Borders. You have to have good communication, security, and lighting prior to aid getting delivered. If you don't have these 3 things, mistakes happen, and if there's Q&A, I'll tell you about a few mistakes. But what does that mean? That means that it takes anywhere from weeks. It could take months. These 3 things could delay critical aid to those who so desperately need our help. But I'm telling you right now, it does not have to take that long. Because while each of these 5 different disasters, from a blizzard in central Texas to Hurricane Katrina to a tsunami, each of these disasters, while they're very different, they each have a common thread. They each have vertical structures, pipes, poles, columns. And that is where we come in, because we've designed a robotic climber that you set at the base of the pipe, pole, column, and it will ascend to the top, locking in a leave behind. Now this leave behind has communication uplink, satellite relay, thermal imagery, whatever it is that the customer needs, we can design, we can develop. And the robot is fully functional. We've demonstrated climbing round poles, square poles, odd-shaped poles, tapered poles, tilted poles. That is my son, 14 years old. He's able to install this thing, so you can too. Because it takes 1 person, 2 suitcases, 10 minutes, and yes, we can climb up palm trees as well. The prototype, the background's a little bit different, but the prototype against our competition, we're simply more cost efficient, over 100 times more cost efficient, easily deployable, fully customizable, and we are persistent, especially when compared to drones. There is a market for this demand. We're looking at around $166 billion outside the United States. Domestically, it's primarily held by FEMA, again, USAID, American Red Cross. If you segment down to just communication, you're looking at $700 billion, and we do believe we can take 10% of that market by year 5. But how are we going to be going to market? The first 2 steps on this run have already been completed. At this point, we're looking at our final design, and that prototype, the final design prototype, is at my desk. Please come by and take a look at it. But ultimately, we are partnered with the University of San Diego and San Diego Sheriff, San Diego Gas and Electric, for their versions of their robotic climber. We are working with FEMA Sector 9, which is over in the western United States, as well as the Office of Emergency Services, local in San Diego County. I'm doing great on time. Oh my God. This image got cut off. There is an ask and our use of funds. We have been shifting primarily from what was initially sales and marketing over to research and development. As that starts to close down, we're looking to secure funding, federal funding on the order of $2 million from these respective agencies. The colors are all over the place here. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. It's throwing me off a little bit, but we are a father and son company. I'm going to get to how we're a father and son company, because you're probably wondering, well, how can a 14-year-old be involved in a major corporation? But before I get there, I work in defense contract. Myself and Jacob have been working together for the past 6 years. We've done everything from man-portable X-ray machines that are robotic in nature and autonomous in nature to go inside of tunnels. And myself and Luke have designed several satellite deployed systems all over the world, and Irina is our machine learning, machine vision local representative. Interesting that the colors are all over the place, but in the previous slide, what it was supposed to say was, this is not how we started. How did we start? Was decorating palm trees. And so we designed a robot because my son was fed up with holding onto the ladder while I was going up there 40 feet up and wrapping it around with holiday lights. So what did we do? He said, Dad, you designed robots. Cut it out, let's build something. And so we did. Oh, that's me on the top over there. And here is the robot that we designed. And so we have the patent on the robot. Right now, why did we shift? And you can't see all the words in here, but the reason why we shift is that we had a VC come up to us after a pitch competition, and they said, hey, that's really nice, but please understand this is post-COVID. And they actually took exception to it. They actually said, look, I want to be involved in something that has a purpose, something that makes a difference in people's lives. Now, just so you know, every year, 16,000 people a year fall off from decorating palm trees, decorating contusions, lacerations, but if we ignore the 16,000 people, fine. And so we pivoted over to emergency services, and there the words are. And then finally, I did want to share with you, because I know we have a couple startups in here, so I was asked to provide the persistency, and I think that one of the speakers talked about, having habits and continuing with habits and keeping it going. Well, I have this habit going, and I wanted to keep it going, so about 2 years ago, we designed the first climber. We went build, design, and tested, and it didn't work. And so please notice that my hand is holding this up. There is no way this first iteration was going to climb, no way it was going to function, so we went to a different design. And we said, okay, we want to have extensible L brackets so that we could climb various shaped poles, various columns, various structure, and then we went ahead and built this. This one must have climbed, right? No. That's as far as it ever got. and then we went to the final one, and look, three iterations took about a year and a half. It isn't easy. So I do want to at least provide that encouragement for anybody who is here as a startup, that look, it takes a while, it takes that persistency, it takes that habit that you talked about, Doug, and hopefully I have it going, because we've raised around $230,000 so far in non-dilutive funds from pitch competitions, and so it does work. Ladies and gentlemen, that is my last slide, and I'm a minute early.
That means you get some questions. You got a couple questions. So you started out with social lights and all that, and you're a for-profit business.
Yes, we're absolutely a for-profit business. We're a Delaware C corporation, and we're looking to invest and make money.
Awesome.
As philanthropic as it sounds, look, we are a for-profit company.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely. I love it. You're solving problems, making money. That's why we're here. Excellent. All right. All right. So next up we have Sheba Najmi, and she is the Executive Director of Tech for Change. I met Sheba at the Don Norman Design Conference a couple weeks ago. Phenomenal presenter. She also has a project within this that she'll talk about, Code for Pakistan. I'm super excited to hear her tell you about how she's changed the world. Mona.
Thanks so much for having me here. It's just, the variety is so fun. Thank you, Cheryl. And as Cheryl said, my name is Sheba Najmi, and I'm the founder and executive director of Tech for Change. But, I think I'm supposed to advance this. Oh, there we go. But I started out as a user experience practitioner in Silicon Valley Tech for about 20 years. And 11 years ago, I went the civic innovation route, and I'm going to tell you what that's about a little bit. But 11 years ago, I started a nonprofit called Tech for Change, whose first initiative is Code for Pakistan. And let me show you what the civic tech problem is. In our, oops. Oh, okay, there we go. That's Tech for Change and its first initiative, Code for Pakistan, which introduced the idea of civic innovation to Pakistan. But what the civic tech problem is this. In our private sector lives, things have come a long way in just the last 15 to 20 years. We used to experience banking like this. Now, banking can happen anywhere. We're now used to services meeting us where we are. But we can see that government hasn't kept up. This is the line outside the Department of Motor Vehicles in Los Angeles. And this is true all over the world. So growing up, I was growing up in Pakistan, my father would send me to stand in line at the post office or to pay electricity bills because the women's line was always shorter than the men's line. But even so, what I encountered over and over again was that interacting with government was tedious and it was painful and it didn't feel like a service. So what ends up happening is that wherever we live in the world, we live at least two distinct lives with a huge discrepancy between them. Our public sector life and our private sector life. And most of the innovation happens in the private sector. So civic tech is this kind of process. It's more so than a technology. It's really a human-centered design approach to bridging that gap between government and citizens. Not so much, as I said, as technology, but really the approach. And I think what's really, really key is that without bridging that gap, what ends up happening is that there's an erosion of trust in government, which then plays out in all sorts of ways in the erosion of democratic values, right? So 10 years ago, with support from the World Bank and in partnership with the province, There's a northwest province in Pakistan called Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, or KP for short. In partnership with that government, we launched Pakistan's first Government Innovation Fellowship Program. It's a 6-month program where technologists like designers and developers team up with government departments to create digital public services. Over the years, they've rolled out dozens of people-focused solutions, but after running a few cycles of the fellowship program, we noticed something. We noticed that despite reserving seats for women in each cohort, the number of women applicants remained really, really low. And it didn't feel inclusive, so we started to dig deeper. We uncovered a critical barrier. Our requirement for prior work experience was unintentionally excluding women. For context, KP is the same province where Malala risked her life to get an education, surviving a bullet from the Taliban, just a year prior to when we launched our fellowship program. Here, tribal customs and conservative systems led by male elders continue to shape daily life today. As a woman, you can't just hop on a bus or call an Uber to get to work. Customs require that you be accompanied by a man everywhere you go. And your family has concerns about you working alongside men, and there's constant pressure to get married young. So for many women graduates in KP, these norms severely limit mobility and access to any kind of professional opportunities beyond the home. What ends up happening is that women graduates who study things like STEM, they don't manage to actually pursue anything beyond their education. And through our research, we identified several barriers, including transportation as a limitation, especially because women are not allowed to be seen and to venture outside without a man. And we identified cultural constraints and a lack of flexible work opportunities. What ended up happening is that together all of these challenges, and there are lots of little challenges that we uncovered, they form this kind of systemic wall that really prevents and blocks women from gaining professional experience. So in response, we approached the KP government with a bold idea: a dedicated women's program that would allow women graduates to gain 6 months of technical experience entirely from home, while also becoming civically engaged and contributing to their communities. This vision led to the launch of the KP Women's Civic Digital Internship Program. Women from all corners of KP applied and joined this program, including the most underserved areas where internet access was a huge barrier. To overcome this barrier, we partnered with telecom companies to donate internet devices and prepaid internet plans for all the women interns. The internship model was designed to include stipends so that the women could not just learn, but they could also earn from home, and so that they could gain a sense of economic independence through their own income, right? But during onboarding, we discovered that none of the women had their own bank accounts. And so as we dug further, we uncovered an even deeper systemic issue. Most of the women didn't even have mobile SIM cards registered in their own names. They were registered under the names of male relatives. And this was a basic requirement to even opening a bank account, right? So we tackled each barrier step by step. Receiving their first paycheck in their own bank accounts became a defining moment for many of these women interns, and it really marked a shift in their confidence. They were now no longer daughters-in-law in their homes. They actually were contributing members to their family's income, and it changed their status. Their journey wasn't without challenges. Some were newly married, some discovered they were expecting during the internship, some had newborns, some had to juggle caregiving responsibilities for sick parents. But they persevered, cohort after cohort, every single one of them, with our team providing a lot of logistical and emotional support. One moment that really sticks with me was at the most recent cohort's final graduation and demo day in Peshawar, which is the capital of KP. The excitement in the air was palpable. As I was approaching the office, I could see all of the women interns were inside, and they were getting ready to not just receive their certificates, but also interact with the companies that were there at the job fair. But as I approached the office, I saw something unexpected. I saw a line of men sitting outside the main hall. At first I was confused, And then I was deeply moved when I learned that these were the fathers and husbands of our interns. They didn't just wait for hours. They were there with a purpose to support their daughters and wives. And in that moment, the significance of it all really hit me, right? These men, shaped by the same culture that we're working to change, they had become the vanguards of change themselves. Their presence spoke volumes about trust earned, about minds open, and about futures being reimagined. For us, these remarkable women are proof that with strong determination and a human-centered design approach, we can break down barriers one by one and enable change. Many are now working in industry or freelancing, creating better lives for themselves and their communities. Some of them have joined our fellowship program, ready to lead civic work alongside the government. It's a testament to what's possible when you remove barriers and create opportunities tailored to a community's unique needs. So for you, what does it take to break down barriers to include underserved groups in your work? I can tell you what it looks like for us. It starts with a human-centered design approach. In this case, really understanding the challenges and constraints that the women of KP face, and then tackling each one systematically. It takes empathy, it takes commitment, it takes genuinely listening. It's about building trust by caring, by offering resources that empower them, and creating spaces where they feel seen and heard and supported. And then to keep ourselves accountable, we measure progress every step of the way. Overall, it's worked for us so far. Beyond the Women's Internship Program, we've come a ways in connecting citizens and government to create better public solutions. And we've tackled public challenges across the board, from healthcare to road safety to education and disaster response. Ultimately, one guiding principle ties together everything we do. Lead with people, not problems. And that's where each of us comes in, right? Look at your community and imagine the possibilities. You have a unique superpower. Use it for the greater good. Thank you so much.
What a lineup, right? I mean, it's such a diverse lineup and so inspiring. So thank you for the insight, time, and call to action. All right, so our last speaker is Sydney Thomas. She's the founder and general partner at Symphonic Capital. And so I'm so glad that she's going to round us out tonight. And then just administrative note for everyone in the audience, after she comes up and speaks, we're going to get them all up here and we're going to do a little bit of Q&A, and that's how we'll close it out. So come on up.
Hi everyone. I'm the first person without slides, so just FYI, there's nothing to look at. Okay. So I'm one small, I guess, detail is Cooley is actually my my law firm. They represent me, my fund. And we actually had our first annual general meeting. I don't know, who knows what that means? Okay, a few people. So I run a venture capital fund. As a part of my requirements to the folks who invest in me, I have to host a meeting once a year called an annual general meeting where I produce reports, outcomes, updates on how the fund is doing. And we did it in this room just a few months ago. And so this is very much a, like...
Deja vu.
Thank you, deja vu.
Full circle moment.
Full circle, yes, exactly, all the things. So I'm Sydney Thomas, originally from San Diego, right near SDSU. I grew up here because my parents thought Cleveland was way too cold. My dad was a fellow at the Cleveland Clinic, nephrologist, and got an offer to be a part of private practice in San Diego, and so we moved. I really hated it growing up. I thought it was extremely boring, and there wasn't really much going on, and everyone seemed like they didn't have a lot of ambition. I knew I wanted to do something bigger than the confines of my city, And it's been really cool to be back in the last couple of years and see how much that has changed. I'm actually a lot older than maybe I look. I'm almost 40. And so I'm talking about the 80s and the 90s San Diego, not the 2020s San Diego. I went to Francis Parker and spent those years like really just thinking about what did I want to do when I grew up. I went to Duke undergrad, studied wealth inequality because my mom is from West Virginia, which, how many of you have been to West Virginia?
Forced elimination.
Okay,
Maybe
there's
five
a
or
few.
something, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's right. It's the second poorest behind Mississippi. And so I have a really large family in the East Coast, about 30 some odd cousins, 12 aunts and uncles, and we would spend summers in West Virginia, and I was always so curious and concerned about why my family there had such a different opportunity for such a different set of opportunities than I had in San Diego. And my dad, as I already mentioned, doctor, nephrologist, and so I also spent my childhood walking dialysis clinics. I don't know if anyone's been to a dialysis clinic. Okay, it is also quite depressing. And the ones that we went to were largely in Chula Vista in downtown, where there was a lot of black and brown folks connected to these machines for hours and hours on end, and it didn't make any sense to me. And so I was studying health inequity and wealth inequality through my own family from a very young age. I'm the oldest daughter, so oldest daughter syndrome, trying to solve all the problems for everyone all the time. So when I went to Duke and studied wealth inequality, my professors there shared with me that the best way to do this would be in government. And so I was like, okay, great, sign me up, I'll do it. Worked for Congressman Barbara Lee for a little bit, worked for Mayor Bloomberg for about 5 years, and was so incredibly optimistic by the opportunity that Bloomberg had to do so much good, because he was able to bring together two very different sides of the table, both the private sector, which he had very deep relationships with, and the public sector. So I was like, you know what? I actually need to know something about this private sector thing if I'm really going to make an impact. That launched my career in the private sector, which sent me to Oakland/Berkeley to go to Berkeley for business school. And I spent those 2 years studying everything and anything. I just wanted to know how actually could I make the most, what could I do most urgently? How could I make the most impact most quickly? And I realized that was through venture capital. I started working as an intern at a startup and creeped into the board meeting one of those days and saw all of these VCs sitting around a boardroom having a very impactful say on not just this company, but on their entire portfolios. And so I was like, okay, wait, these people actually can have a opportunity to build a future that they want to see exist by investing and actively creating a whole new industry. And so I was like, sign me up, how do I get that job? And everyone at business school was like, well, you don't get that job. You just came from the public sector, so you actually need to sign up for all of these other steps first. I don't believe you. And so I signed up for LinkedIn Premium. This was 2016, so still dating myself, where people actually checked their LinkedIn messages. I still check my LinkedIn messages, so if you message me, I will respond. But there's a lot of people who don't anymore. Emailed close to 200 different VCs, got a response from a few, one or two, and one of those folks I asked for a job, and she shared with me that she didn't have a job, but she knew a guy who might be able to have a job for me. And so that's how I got my start in VC. I hustled my way through almost 10 years of working at another fund. They started at about 5 million funds raised. I helped them grow to over 200 million funds raised. They had about 10 companies invested in when I joined. I helped them grow to over 400 companies invested in. And then I was like, you know what, I think I know what I'm doing. I think it's time for me to launch my own thing. And so I launched Symphonic Capital, came back home. It's been such an amazing homecoming to do it here, with a lot of, I think, the vision that I gained from being in the Valley. And we invest in companies that are closing access gaps around health and wealth. So the same stuff that I was curious about as a kid. Happy to answer any questions. I think I have like 45 seconds, but then I'll just stop early and you guys can ask me questions afterwards.
Well, we welcome having a minute back, so we appreciate you for that. But come on back, because we're all going to get, if you spoke tonight, please come take a chair up here, and then we're going to do just a bit of Q&A. And my timekeeper, how much time do we have to actually do this? 10 minutes, I think? 10 minutes, all right. So, and then we're going to do a raffle, too. We got to do a, oh yeah, let's do a little breather breaker.
Just a breather.
Who wants some?
Something light and fun. Who wants a sustainable? We have to check with Cindy to see if it's actually sustainable. So our door prize.
Yeah, I said. So Jonah Peak, are you in here? All right, Jonah Peak, the social coyote. If you're not following him, you got it. He's a great guy.
Yeah. So he's behind Wreath & Co.
Yes.
And beautiful sustainable living wreaths from Washington. Anyway, we're giving one away, and they're gorgeous. You pick.
I think that we should have someone else pick, because Cindy, the pressure's on, and if it's not sustainable, we're coming back to you.
You're welcome to come back to me. David Resilient.
David Resilient. Lisa, do we give it? Do we give it?
Must be present to win.
You're working on that line thing?
He's outside? Okay.
We'll give it to him.
Yeah, we'll give it to him. We'll give it. The drinkers are outside.
Thank you. All right, thank you. All right. Thank you, Cheryl. Selfishly, I want to ask a question. You know, with the premise being in the beginning is that you don't have to be a 501c to be in the social good. So raise your hand if you're a 501c3 or a 501c6, right? Do one out of all of these. And that was the point that I was hoping to prove tonight. So with that, can we get a raise of hands of anyone that wants to engage with the panelists in this window of time, 9 minutes and 48 seconds.
One more thing, we're giving away a membership.
Oh, and we're giving away a membership.
Yeah,
Oh, we're
sorry.
going to do that right at the end. We'll
Sorry.
be our last. No, I know you got quick. Come on, bring it up, right? Let's hear it.
Thank you, everyone. Great presentation. Really wide variety of topics. I guess, Sydney, just because you're the last one, so your questions off the top of my head. You talked a little bit about these VCs and like kind of them being able to create the world that they want to see. And so I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about like, how are you creating the world you want to see, and maybe like what does that look like?
Great question. I learned that so many of the wealth inequality and health inequity problems in this country are solvable. They do not need to exist. And so that's the world I'm creating, where there is no racial wealth gap. On average, for folks who don't know, there's a racial wealth gap where on average, the average Black American holds 1/10 of the wealth that the average white American does. And in health equity, especially between women and men, it's just, the stats, it's just silly. It makes no sense. And so those are the companies that I'm investing in that have these very ambitious ideas of closing these gaps and creating a future where we're actually treated equally.
Excellent, great question. Anyone else? All right, Val.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Valerie Koshalev. I want to thank all of you. Thank you so much for taking the time and organizing your thoughts and sharing with us, and for everything that you're doing, because you're making the world a better place. And we all need to do it. And I just realized that I joined the startup scene, which was, I guess, who knows when I joined the San Diego startup scene. 18 years ago, and that was because of my environmentalism, my commitment to it, and I realized that business is the way I can actually affect change. Because it's very hard to get people to donate to my rhino and elephant conservation and nonprofit work since I was in 8th grade, but really started in high school. And so I've actually been working on my latest project, which, Doug, you are going to help mentor me on, I know already. I'm really sure I heard you just offer. So I'm combining wildlife conservation nonprofit work with my knowledge base, which is evolution. And so my current project is dating with Darwin. Happy to explore more if anybody who's interested. Again, I said dating with Darwin. I apologize, I should always enunciate, because this is a new way to put these words and concepts together. But the goal there is that as I educate you about your nature and the human mating system that we are all a part of, then you start learning about your own nature and caring about all of nature. And therefore, you'll be happy that a portion of what you pay to be a customer at Dating with Darwin will go to save the rhinos and elephants that I grew up protecting in Africa.
Do you have a question?
Yeah.
But do you have a question?
No, and it is.
My question is, do you
Yeah,
have a question?
and then I've got a whole bunch of questions. I'll just keep going. So I would love to hear your thoughts. And really, truly, Doug, I do think we should talk. I think you spoke to my heartstrings there. But also to inspire anyone else who is even thinking this now, to make a commitment for 2025 that we actually make our work be sustainable. Because if we aren't doing it, nobody's going to do it. Right? Our government is not representing us in this space. So anyway, more thoughts on how to continue to affect the social good and nonprofit world. Just your thoughts from hearing each other. Or anything I've just said. Thank you.
Great, and we also, just to note that after this is done, one-on-one time is also appropriate too, so, but does this pull at anyone's heart besides you, Doug? I mean, I think you've been tapped on this one, but quite a few times.
I think the heart of what everyone was saying up here so wonderfully is to be driven by human meaning. It connects with animals or whatnot, and this relentlessness, which you brought up again, and so beautifully to keep pushing toward a solution. So I think everyone reinforced that wonderful point.
Phenomenal. That's it. We were really running short on time, just under 4 minutes here, or 5 minutes rather. Can you just, everyone, quick raise a hand of how many questions we do have so we can gauge time here. Okay, so if we can do 1 minute question and answers, I know that's super quick and aggressive, but hey, we're startups, we do radical things. So, quickly.
I have a question for Cindy Lynn. So I work for a sustainability startup as well, and I'm just curious about your sales strategy. I find it's really difficult to find businesses that are passionate about sustainability and like getting them to even just hop on a call to learn about how you can provide an ROI on sustainability, like do better for the environment, the planet, everyone. So yeah, thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's a great question. Just so you know, I spent like 18 months trying to figure that question out. And I think at the end of the day, it goes to trying to understand like what does your customer want. It's not just what they say they want. It's what do they need. So I think that 18 months, almost 2 years kind of journey is trying to figure out and listen behind the words. And at the end of the day, what people need are they respond to something that drives their customer base. So I mentioned greenwashing is huge. There's lots and lots and lots of data I can throw at you, which I did it today, about how greenwashing actually challenges companies. So that's one. The number two thing is I really stand on policy and regulations because that's my background, but regulations and policy or upcoming regulations policy will drive companies to do better. So that's what we stand on, is trying to meet those gaps. So in the sustainability space, there's a ton of green initiatives and regulations, hardcore regulations with fines from the European Union. So a lot, almost all of our, I would say clients or business customers are in the fashion, because they have to deal with that in the supply chain. And then secondly, I think any upcoming policies here in the US, if you're on the coast doing any work, you can stand to that and identify that those are real needs that for making their business work.
Okay, shifting to the other side of the room.
Hi, I'm Amanda Billings. Thank you all for talking. So as you're building a business that you really want to help and do good, do you guys have any advice on how to make sure that the investors that you're including or the team that you're building are kind of aligned to that same mission and making sure you find like the right people? Open to anyone.
I would strongly encourage you to question capital. Oftentimes, what we see as an impact investor is that founders give too much leverage and too much power to investors. I think you have to look intentionally after the type of investment or the money. If you think about money, it is a tool. I would encourage you to start assigning characteristics to the money. Because if you say, hey, I'm looking for money that's actually patient, I'm looking for capital that's actually intentional or has a higher virtue, you start looking for that characteristic and you start looking around for what investors actually align with those specific characteristics based on their existing portfolio. But most importantly, I would strongly encourage our investors, our founders, even our portfolio companies. I always tell folks, our intention is to give you a term sheet ahead of time because we want to empower you to negotiate with us. We want you to actually have a say in what that term sheet looks like. So I think it's time for founders to start taking some of that power when we think about using finance for good. Like investors, I'm an angel investor when I'm not at mission-driven finance. Not because I'm smart, not because I know something more than any other folks. I'm just really good at making money. I'm not any smarter. If anything, I should be begging you as a founder to say, give me this opportunity to invest in you, and not founders begging investors for capital.
Well said. Right. So I wish that we had more time. We literally have 47 seconds, so I have to do this plug. And here's the plug. Startup San Diego is a 501c3 run by volunteers. We have one paid employee. Raise your hand, Lisa. Everyone else is hustling. All right. And so when you do your end of year donation, because you got to do it for your tax deduction, don't forget us. And let's go out there and let's party. Wait, do I have one more thing to do? Oh, we're giving away a membership.
We said we're giving away a membership, which gives you...
Yes, let's have one of our panelists pick. All right, over here.
Tickets to
An equitable pick I'm feeling, no less.
Not looking. Thanks everyone for
All right, what do we got there?
Microphones.
Amos.
My pot banging.
Cat.
Amos Calf.
Woo!
Right on.